Welcome to the She's Bold podcast. I'm Beth Whitman. This is the 100th episode of the She's Bold podcast. Wow. Now, I never had a doubt that I was going to make it to 100. You'll notice that early episodes started with 001, 002, etc. for that very reason, because I wanted that room for 100 in there. But now that I'm here, I have to tell you, I am so pleased by what I consider a body of work that will hopefully be enjoyed by people for a long time. Now, it's one thing to sit down with these women week after week, these conversations, and they turn into these transformational conversations for me, hopefully for you as well. But you know what kind of topped that? It was really inspiring for me as I prepared for this 100th episode to go through every conversation, re-listen to portions of them, each and every one of them, and be reminded of how truly inspirational these women are on so many levels. If this is your starting point, the first time you're joining me, welcome. And if you've heard a previous episode, you'll know that I end the conversations by asking these women some form of the question around what it means to them to be bold. So this 100th episode is a compilation of those responses. I hope you'll enjoy this standalone episode, this roundup of responses, but I also hope that it'll be a teaser, enough of a teaser that if you've missed any of these conversations, you'll go back and listen to them or re-listen to them if you've heard them before. Truly, there are some gems here in all of the conversations I've had. Now, I do give brief introductions for each guest, but I haven't mentioned the episode numbers because I just thought that would get a little boring. But you shouldn't have a problem finding them. You can find out more about each of these women by going to the show notes for their episode at shesboldpodcast.com/episodes. Now, there's no theme or order to how I've put these together. Some of these answers are very brief, and others you'll hear are a little bit more conversational, and that's just how they turned out during our chats. Now, as I reflect back on these conversations and episodes, I have to say I am so honored and I'm humbled that I had the chance to sit down and chat with these ladies. It's an opportunity that I don't take for granted, and I thank them all for their time. And I really, really thank you for being here and being a supporter and listening to the show and enjoying this. And I really do hope you enjoy this roundup. Now, I'm going to start with Helen Thayer. No doubt all the ladies I've spoken with are bold in one way or another, but Helen is really beyond. Helen was the first woman to reach the magnetic North Pole on a solo journey at age 50. She walked 4,000 miles across the Sahara, walked 1,600 miles across the Gobi at 63. She kayaked 2,200 miles of the Amazon, and more recently at age 80, she walked across Death Valley. Now, she's the author of several books, including Polar Dream, Walking the Gobi, and 3 Among the Wolves. Nothing is stopping this woman. Even in her 80s, she talks about still what it means to her to be bold, and there is no doubt that she has so much more in her future. Helen Thayer. I always end these conversations by asking the guest, what does it mean to you to be bold?
Well, to be bold to me means I can get out and I'm bold enough to get out and do what I want to do and bold enough to find a way to do it and overcome all of the obstacles along the way and get to the end result.
Whether that's finding someone at Boeing who can architect design the sled and somebody else who can build the sled. Or live with the
Inuit to teach me about the polar bears on the Arctic ice. Or in Death Valley, find a way to get down through all of that with no water. What am I going to do about the water? Because I had to carry it all myself. And so 185 pounds, I pulled a cart behind me, 185 pounds. So way, way heavier than I am, but that's what I did. And so, okay, I realized that was going to be heavy. So I trained for it. I just got my legs and hips really, really super, super strong. So you just tailor your body to handle the project ahead. So I would say being bold is just going ahead and finding a way to do it. And even though it seems this might be an impossible task, but I want to do it. So, okay, I will find a way to do it. And with that attitude, you always find a way to do it.
Eye on the prize.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Oh, yes, always. Yes. Yep.
Latoya Shante Snell is a road and trail runner. She's an adventurer, and definitely she is an activist. In short, Latoya is known as the fat running chef. She fell in love with running, and as an overweight person has become an outspoken advocate by encouraging people to run or just exercise in some fashion, no matter where they are in life. Latoya is full on, and I encourage you to follow her on social media if you need a good dose of honesty and to hear someone not afraid to speak her mind.
To be bold. Be bold is to be yourself, to embrace everything about yourself, the good, the bad, and the straight up ugly. So many times we want to glorify certain aspects of our life to the point where we are not forgiving to ourselves about the things that maybe we come up short in. Acknowledge those things, question those things. I can't say it enough. Question those things of what's going wrong, the things that you want to fix, but embrace yourself at your present state so you can love yourself even more further on down the line.
Allison DiValazzi was sexually assaulted on a Delta Airlines flight, and it was then that she realized that airlines have no formal way to deal with such incidences that happen in flight. They just are not well equipped for that. And since that happened, she did sue the airline, but more importantly, she has been helping to pass legislation requiring airlines to implement procedures to deal with these sorts of occurrences. She's really taken on a lot to do so. She has been very bold in the process.
I think to be bold is to live in that space. For me, it's about making a difference, about having an impact. And that often means putting yourself in a place where you might be a little bit uncomfortable, but leaving a mark that's going to make something better for someone else. If I can encourage people to do something they might not have done, to take that risk, and to know that you're going to learn from it. Maybe it'll be hard and it won't be what you wanted it to be, but I think that's it too. It's because you just don't know. But what does happen is you learn from it. So what is it to be bold? I think it's having an impact and taking those risks.
Katie Mackey is a professional runner who specializes in mid-distance races. And at the time that we recorded, she was with the Brooks Beast Track Club here in Seattle. And I think that she's gone on to do some other really great stuff. This is what she said about being bold.
I think being bold means doing things that scare you, having goals that scare you, and not being deterred if you don't achieve them right away, but really just picking yourself back up and continuing to go after them and finding purpose in the journey.
Deirdre Walnick is perhaps best known as being Alex Honnold's mom. Alex Honnold from the movie Free Solo. Hopefully you've seen that. But she is a huge adventurer in her own right. She's the author of several books, including her latest, The Sharp End of Life, A Mother's Story. But just incredibly, she climbed El Capitan when she was 66. Talk about bold.
To not believe all the naysayers, basically. If whether you're 5 or 10 or 60. I mean, I climbed El Cap when I was 66. That's significant.
That is significant.
Yeah, I climbed El Cap when I was 66. I was 65 while I was training for it, and I climbed it when I was 66. And I started climbing when I was 56 or 57, something like that. So age is just a number. It's what you believe. That's the most important. Don't buy into the naysayers. That's what it means really in this world, in this life, to be bold. Those people they call bold are the ones who did not buy into the naysayers.
What's your goal age? How old were you?
To live to?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, at least 100 and a quarter. I mean, just
great, 125.
Yeah, to done some of the things I want to get done. I mean, I long to get back to painting. I haven't been able to set up my painting in this house because we had kids and we had a dog and I had 19 jobs and I haven't been able to, but I'd like to get back to that. It's painting and piano are immensely therapeutic, centering, focusing. It's kind of like rock climbing. Piano and rock climbing are alike in that they get you 100% focused. You cannot think about anything else while you're doing them.
You're in the flow.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And the instant that flow goes away, you start hitting wrong notes or you fall off the rock, and painting also does that for me. I used to lose hours and hours painting, and then I'd look and, oh my goodness, it's dinner time. That's what we all long for, is that kind of focus.
Chef Amy Sins is a hoot. She's a New Orleans gal through and through, living in the French Quarter, creating a beautiful business and community through food. If you ever pass through the city, do whatever you can to hire her, to make a meal for you, to sit down with you, and just to get to know her, because she is so much fun and her food is incredible.
To me, I kind of feel like if I tried to be any bolder, I might get myself into a lot of trouble. But, being bold, in my opinion, is tackling it, going after it, being ready for the unexpected with open eyes and open arms and embracing it. And I think also maybe making things happen. You can't just sit back and wait. You have to move forward. So move forward assertively and be bold.
What do you think about luck? Do you believe in it?
I do, but I think we also make it ourselves. And if I'm constantly have the mental attitude, I'm down on my luck, bad things are happening, I'm surrounding myself with negativity. Well, whether or not I have bad luck, I'm choosing to see the bad things that are happening so they make a bigger impression. Whereas if I go, I have good luck, you start to realize all the good things that happen. So I think it's about your focus and where you're putting your focus. And hey, if I win the lottery, because you can't win if you don't buy a ticket, yay, that's great luck. But if it's, I'm in a bad mood today, my car didn't start, my tire busted, that happens to everybody. It's a matter of our perspective and how we choose to look at it.
Dr. Pepper Schwartz, yes, that's her name, is a sociologist and sexologist who teaches here at the University of Washington here in Seattle. She is the author or the co-author of numerous books. She is a television personality on the subject of sexuality. And no, she did not include sex in her thoughts around being bold. Sorry, but here's what she said.
What it means to be bold for me is to act in a way that I like and am proud of myself. And if I feel I am doing the right thing or the brave thing or the exciting thing or the necessary thing, I'm proud of myself. It makes me happy. And if I'm not bold, if I'm doing that from a lack of conviction or fear, those aren't good emotions to live with. So bold is a good way to go through the world.
Angel Murdoch is amazing. She lives in Salt Lake City, where she is a mother of 4, a nurse midwife, and an incredible adventurer. When we had spoken, she had just returned from Nepal, where she was trekking in very remote regions, providing health care for people, particularly women who had never had even basic services, even during their pregnancy. Boy, the stories that she told in that episode, really pretty astounding.
To be bold, I think, is to lean into that uncomfortable place, to find the balance between trusting your truth, speaking your truth, pushing yourself towards the things that are calling your name, and knowing that some things are going to be spectacular failures and some things are going to be spectacular. And I think that as long as we don't put limitations on ourselves, we can be bold in every endeavor. It's bold to sit with my 5-year-old when he's telling me about something that's not interesting, and and I can smile
and you can rally.
Or to look at it, a new idea,
to ask the checkout clerk how she's doing today.
Yeah. Sometimes it's just that simple soul connection that if I stop worrying so much about myself and what I need to do, I can be bold in putting myself out there. Basically, to be bold is to live your truth and trust your truth and embrace the adventures that come, because they'll find you.
Yeah, they will. Definitely be flexible when they do find you, too. Ella Morton is the author of Atlas Obscura, an explorer's guide to the world's hidden wonders. She grew up in Australia, so you'll hear her charming accent, but she calls New York City home right now. Listen to that episode. You'll see that she finds joy and wonder throughout the world. To that end, curiosity and boldness. Do you have anything that's coming up? I know you've got your Havana trip happening.
Yes.
Do you have anything else that you would consider bold that you have coming up in the near or far future?
Bold. Let me see. I'm trying to become like a more well-rounded person and learn more skills.
Yeah. Such as?
So this is embarrassing to admit at my age, but I'm a terrible cook. And
Me too. So.
Yay! I actually was trying to cook a few months ago and ended up slicing my finger and fainting.
Oh, okay. I haven't done that.
Because and it wasn't even a bad cut. It's so embarrassing. It was the tiniest cut, but me and blood don't get along. So I'm trying to be more bold in a day-to-day sense.
Great.
And that probably sounds super boring to be taking cooking classes.
No,
but,
not at all.
There's this organization in New York called League of Kitchens where they get immigrants who are really good cooks you basically go into their kitchen and they teach you how to make a meal and then you sit down and eat it together.
Wow.
And we've started doing a bit of work with them. And that's my next thing that I want to do is cook with the League of Kitchens.
Is this only in New York? Do you know?
So
or do you
far,
think,
yes.
Oh my gosh, please come to Seattle.
I know.
That sounds amazing. Colleen Poling is a registered dietitian and health coach. She lives in Portland, and she's somebody who is determined to live life on her own terms, despite any fear that she might feel about it.
What does it mean to me to be bold? To step into fear, to follow fear. To know that when I follow fear, that means growth. And when I follow fear, that will inspire others, and then turn, that's bold.
What are you fearful of right now?
I'm a little bit fearful of, what the future will bring in a way. But I feel in a really good place where I can handle it. I would still probably go back to showing up in the capacity of a video with my platforms. I'm still a little bit hesitant. I started on Sunday with it, and I have to keep facing that fear because I just have this innate nervous system reaction to doing that, as I was saying before. So there's a lot of fear that comes up with speaking up and people not necessarily agreeing with what I have to say or not liking me. And I think I have to just face it anyway. And that's scary still. And
Is it specifically video?
Yes, video. Even this podcast, I was scared tonight to come and to speak my voice, but it's just something about me being on video and having my voice being spoken. There's just like that combination, because when you see someone on video, you can see their mannerisms, you can see their face, you can decide if you like that person or not in a way. So that's scary to be judged.
Do you feel like it's a fear that you need to overcome?
Yes.
Why?
Because I have a belief, a story, that speaking up is, and being seen and being heard is not okay. And it is okay. So by me facing that and doing the thing I'm afraid to do, that will overwrite the story.
I was so delighted to have the chance to sit down with singer-songwriter Dar Williams. She's an incredibly keen observer, and she's got just the biggest heart, and she really just wants to help others, and she managed to bring that desire around with regards to her thoughts on being bold.
I would say being bold is feeling like your horse is ahead of the cart. So you're the horse, there's the cart back there, whatever we want to call that cart, whatever it's pulling, whatever it's, whatever you're pulling along, positive or negative, you're the horse. Your head is up, your throat is out. There's no gravel in your shoes. And you're pulling your life you're locomoting forward. And if that is, I love the people who say, today I saw a cloud that looked like Godzilla, and it made me wonder if I should go to this movie marathon of Mothra films that's happening next. Like, just the people who just live their life one step at a time. What interests them, what pulls them out. That to me is what I would call bold, as opposed to the products that they're able to create out of that boldness and confidence. So that's my aspiration to I wake up, I'm like, Dar, you're the horse. Just be the horse. and that's what I believe in. But I also believe it's really hard for certain people to be bold based on the system of the country. So part of
on
it is
so many levels,
right,
for so many reasons.
So also, I don't know if bold is what I hope for everybody. I hope to be a part of the whole community. So if you're down for the count and you need some gravel taken out of your shoes, maybe I can be the person that's there for that part of the whole thing, or to help you launch that cart behind you or something like that, so that we can get you up. And yes, someday what we would call bold, but it's a fantastic word, and I hope it for everybody. But I also am part of the triage team over in the tent to be cool when you're not feeling so bold either.
Kelly Herron was sexually assaulted in a public bathroom while she was out for a run. That experience changed her life. But rather than letting it get her down, she made lemonade out of lemons, and she's just turned it into something incredible, a business called Not Today. It definitely took a bold attitude to do that. I like to end these conversations by asking the guest, what does it mean to you to be bold?
To be unapologetic and to do what's best for you, and to not worry about being polite about it. Just follow your gut and don't apologize for it. You're the only one who can look out for you. No one's going to save you except yourself. And I think so often we rely on, oh, well, I have my phone so I can call 911, or, oh, I can yell so someone will hear me. Well, guess what? Sometimes people hear you yell and they don't do anything. So to me, being bold is to take your life into your own hands and realize your own worth, and be ready for any situation, and don't apologize for it. Use whatever language you want if you're trying to save your own life.
You know what's difficult about that is that we are taught from birth, from a very early age, that we are not capable of doing things on our own.
Yeah.
And whether that's doing something in the household and your husband takes over because it's either easier for him to do it because he's taller or bigger or stronger, but which are all valid. But we learn to just bow down to that and say, okay, you can do it, kind of maybe even get lazy about it. But what you bring up is a really good point. It's take control of it and question yourself whether you're not doing something on your own because you can't and you actually need help, or because you haven't thought it through.
Yeah.
You haven't visualized it. And that's a good, it's a good reminder.
Yeah. And one thing I tell women who have a hard time with that too is think of the person in your life who you would do absolutely anything for to defend them. That person very quickly will come to mind for most women, and how you would just give your absolute life for that person and never let anyone harm them. And then try to take that energy and reflect it back at yourself and realize, I am worth that same effort, and I am just as valuable. My own life is just as valuable. So we have it in us to do for someone else. So we certainly have it in us to do it for ourselves.
Stephanie Zito is a travel writer who has a background in humanitarian work, and that work has taken her from Asia to Africa. As she calls herself, she's a wanderer for good?
I think it's stepping into the places where you're uncomfortable and chasing the things that you want, especially if they're things that are hard to get or things that aren't the things that other people think that you should have.
I think sometimes people don't even know what they want.
Oh, definitely.
What's your recommendation in figuring that part of it out?
I think talking to people who know you really well. I was actually talking to a friend the other day who I've known for a really long time, who's kind of going through this. She has 2-year-old twins and is kind of going through this, figuring out kind of how to manage her life and stuff. And I was talking to her, and it was very clear to me what she was saying, like the choice she wanted to make. And I was like, it's really clear to me what you're saying. And she was like, I just don't think I've talked to anyone who knows me really well for a while about this. And just talking it out to not in your own head, but to someone who knows you well, a lot of times it's really evident what you need. And if you're talking to someone that you're completely comfortable with and who knows you well enough to be like, of course that's what you want.
Well, it's like the counselor
yeah, exactly.
who told you in Cambodia, like, what are you doing?
Like
This
the
is
most
what you need to
obvious thing ever. So I think, talking to those people and making space to do to think through those different things, and actually the space to think. Yes, today is my kind of goal setting day, but I've been fostering those thoughts kind of for the last 2 weeks in my head about like, what are those things? What are the things that you want to be possible, and what do you need to get to them? And so, I've been thinking about that, and it kind of it's kind of been evolving. I think that's how you get to those places to learn what it is that you might want to go after next.
Vicki Punter is a sailor, adventurer, and a businesswoman. She owns my favorite store on Kauai called Hawaiki, and that's how we actually got connected, because I love her store so much I had to find out who the person was behind it all. She spent 20 years sailing the world with her husband, Captain Jim, and she puts it plain and simply what she thinks being bold is all about.
It means to stand on your own 2 feet and take a deep breath and step forward.
Mimi Tung Edelman is the founder of Mimi Globe Goods, where she employs immigrant women here in Seattle that create beautiful retail products like jewelry, just really beautiful things. It's an amazing way to provide fair pay to these women who may not otherwise have work.
Being bold is not be afraid to take action on your ideas, because sometimes we all have a lot of ideas, and it's sitting there thinking about it or overthinking about it or thinking about it and just say, let's take an action. So for me, I thought, well, wouldn't it be great to combine my desire to help women and my fashion? But then I decided to actually make it happen. So being bold is that you take a chance. You don't know you're going to succeed or not. Mm-hmm. But knowing that you're taking the first step, you already succeeded.
Kim Studerman Rogers is a journalist and photographer living on Kauai. She actually considers herself a citizen scientist, which I just thought was such a great term. And really what she's done is she's pursued a number of interests that have led her to creating a very fulfilling life on the island.
I would say the boldest thing that I can do as a person is to be true to myself, be honest with myself, and in doing that, to try to live to my fullest potential. So I feel like so many of us hide our talents, so many of us hide our deepest desires and wishes, but if we can be true to ourselves and then act upon that, then I think the entire world would be better off, because we'll have happier people. We'll have more satisfied people that will have less anger, and then we'll raise happier children and just embrace who we are so we can be the best possible humans we could be.
Darcy Stanke is the author of Flash Count Diary, and it's about menopause and how we might change the way this is viewed and thought about. And really, she's not afraid to address things head on.
As a writer, I want to be as honest as I can be. To me, that's boldness is about being honest, really being honest about your own experience. I could talk about, doing free-water swimming, and I love all that. I swim across this lake, as much as I can in the summer, like in upstate New York. And those things make me feel good and bold and connected to the earth. But as far as like actually being like as courageous as I can, it has to do with being really, really open in my writing, you know, just as honest as possible. I mean, even when the truths like don't make me look good, you know, I think those are the ones that are the hardest to tell.
How do you do that without self-censoring?
Well, you try to, it's hard enough just to figure out what you are feeling and, you know, to actually follow your actual thoughts and emotions and figure those out is hard. You know what I mean? So I don't know. Sometimes, if something scares me that I've thought, I often will try to figure out why, you know, and if it seems like maybe I'll think, oh, that would make people think I'm a bad person. But then I think to myself, like, would it? Like, hasn't everyone felt that way? So I try to figure out, I try to, rather than, I don't know. I feel like when you think of self-censoring, you think about trying to make yourself look good or look positive, but writing doesn't really work that way. Nobody cares. Nobody wants people want it to relate to a real human who does things that are bad. You know what I mean? Like, who may be bold sometimes, but also is not bold sometimes. You know what I mean? Like, and a real human has a lot of flaws and a lot of weaknesses. And so the whole life of writing, or the kind of writing I do that I've done in my life, is about trying to be honest about those weaknesses so you can connect to the audience. So you can connect to the reader, like, as deeply as you can, you know, and you connect through weakness. I don't know. I just don't know how much. Sometimes you can connect with strength, but it has to be through weakness and then strength. You know what I mean? I don't think just purely strength really connects you to anybody.
You know Samantha Brown from the Travel Channel and from her new series on PBS called Places to Love. She is as wholesome and lovely in person as she is on her shows. And yeah, she's pretty bold, even though she seems like she's all Midwestern charm.
Oh boy. Be bold.
Do you feel like you are bold?
I do now. Yeah. Owning my show, that was basically, huge. I didn't see it, things weren't happening for me. And so I said, I'm going to do it myself. And I didn't think I could do it myself. I had a lot to go up against, but just slowly but surely. How did
you come to that? So you're bold now, and that's just in the last maybe 3 or 4 years I'm assuming it's been at least a couple of years since you decided that. How did you come to that decision? Was it a little seed and you were like, oh yeah, I'm kind of thinking about the show, and then it got bigger and then it started to grow and started talking to people about it?
It just sort of starts to grow. But I think you put it out there, and I started to say, I'm going to have my own show. And then now I have to, right? you got once you say it, you gotta go out there and make it happen. And I was let go from the Travel Channel, and I didn't have a job, but I knew I was really good at this job, and I thought, I'm really good at what I do, and I still want to do it, even though a network doesn't want to hire me to do it. I still want to do it, and so it was a 3-year process, and it was a lot of, wow, I don't think we're going to be able to do this. And so finally, you just start talking to everybody, and you try to get as much great information as you can about what the next step is, and what the next step is. And then eventually I got there. And so there's some luck to it, but there was a lot of, this is what we want, and we're going to go for it.
Dina Bennett is an author and travel junkie, and she's currently living in Provence. Poor gal. I was first introduced to Dina when I read her book, Peking to Paris, and I just loved it. It is such a great book. And I was just so happy when she was passing through Seattle recently and made time to sit down with me to chat about all things travel and being bold.
Being bold isn't a tremendous leap of faith. It's a small step from wherever you are. And intrinsic in the word step is movement. If you take one step, you have moved and you're in a different spot than you were before. That's what being bold is. Makes me cry.
Leah Ditton is preparing to row from Japan to San Francisco on a 5,500-mile solo journey. Row, as in row a boat, all by herself. Yeah, you got to listen to that episode, Leah Ditton. She's certainly one to make bold moves.
Well, I think you can't know what will happen next until you put it out there. If you have a need or a want or a desire, until you breathe life into it, no one knows. And so they might say, oh, well, oh my goodness, you should have said, because I have the answer to that, or I have something for you, or, you want to go on a bike trip? I have a bike. I was about to sell it. Nobody knows until you resonate, with others. So, I think, literally be bold. That's it. That's the podcast is to say these things out loud, and chew them around like gum to see where that goes. And you can spit it out, but you've got to chew.
Well, what does it mean to you to be bold?
To take those steps towards something that you want, that you believe you can achieve, or that you want to try and achieve.
Julia Garling was once in a wheelchair recovering from a brain tumor, not sure that she would ever walk again. If she had listened to the doctors, that would have been the case. But she picked herself up and has since run more than, it's got to be 225 marathons at this point. And by the time you hear this, it's going to be more than that, I'm sure. Bigger picture is that she really has one of the most positive attitudes of anyone I've ever met. She is just amazing, really amazing.
Follow your heart. Absolutely follow your heart. No matter what society tells you, or what your parents tell you, or what the media tells you, listen to that voice that's been stifled by everything else and let that flame live. Follow your truth, because there are beautiful things you can achieve if you just believe. What if you didn't listen to all those people who said you can't do it, but listen to that little voice that says, I can. You can train that voice and follow that.
And like you, surround yourself with really mentors, even if you've never met them, whether that's Helen Keller or Viktor Frankl or David Goggins.
So many.
Or Julia Garling, whoever it is.
Marianne Williamson was a big one for me. It's just so many. I can't think of her name. She wrote A Gift from the Sea. The words you tell yourself are important. Your thoughts become your words. What you tell yourself, those mental movies you play when you're running or when you're doing anything that says you can't, you have to turn that off and remind yourself that you can. So what I meant to say was your thoughts become your words, and your words, they become your actions, and your actions, they become your beliefs, and your beliefs, it makes your character. So it's all about what you feed yourself. Just tell yourself that you can, because you can do so much more than you think you can. And I'm proof of that. I'm 100% proof of that.
Carol O'Dara was visiting Seattle from Kenya when I had the chance to sit down with her and hear about the things that she's doing in her country to change her community. She's doing this by helping women create better economic situations for themselves.
Being bold is knowing what you want, knowing what you really want and saying it. Because if you don't ask for it, who is going to ask it for you? Yeah, I think as women, culturally, we are not taught to be bold. Yeah, we always just told, you're just supposed to be in the kitchen. That's your place, Being bold is saying what you want. And that's why in most places of the African countries, they're all issues of girl child education campaigns. People are not letting girls to go to school because they're not being bold to ask for what they should ask for. So it is... Yeah, it is asking for what you want. First of all, you have to know what you want and ask for it. Because if you don't do that, then no one will give it to you. Yeah.
As an outsider coming to the U.S., do you think that women here are bold?
The women in the U.S., some of them do.
So you don't see it across the board that, oh, yes, American women are all bold.
Yeah, no.
Do you see the difference?
I see the difference. Okay. Yeah, I see the difference. It also depends on the environment that you've been, all the environments that you've gone through. I tend to feel that people who have educated or more educated are more bolder than those who are not. Yeah, so it's all different. Right. Yeah, that's why everyone needs to be or if you're not even educated, at least you have some knowledge about something, and so that helps you know what you want and you become bold about it.
Chef Michael lives and works in Santa Fe, and I've known her for a long time because she often is the chef for our culinary groups at the Santa Fe School of Cooking. She is one of the most fun, boisterous women I know, and we talk about how she taps into that big personality of hers. So how do you bring your, as I called it earlier, your light and your enthusiasm and your big love of life into a room of people and affect them so much when you'd be just as happy out with your horse?
You know, I want people to at least leave Santa Fe, and I'm speaking about being at the cooking school because that's where I encounter big groups of people. I want them to leave Santa Fe with an understanding of why this place is so special. And you know, I want them, if it's at a party or something, if I feel like I can bring a laugh to somebody or say something that they find funny, well, that's kind of my job as a human. So it's I don't know. I do like people. They're okay. You know, I have to interact. I'm all right with that. But sometimes it takes, especially being a teacher, it takes a lot out of you. I mean, every single one of those 93 kids took a little something every day. And I would go home and just exhausted. But the last day of school was hard. Saying goodbye to the ones that were there was really hard. Harder than I thought it would be.
Because they ended up tugging on your heartstrings.
Yeah. Yeah, some of them wrote me letters, and I couldn't read them for a couple days. I was like,
Harriet Baskus is a travel writer with a website called Stuck at the Airport because she would love nothing more than to be stuck at the airport. She's quirky like that. I asked her if she had anything bold coming up, and she told me about her next project. And yeah, it's quirky. Do you have anything bold planned in the coming, let's say, year?
Yes.
Do tell.
Inspired by you and other people like you. I mean, I've written some books. I've written books that I truly wanted to, but I have another book that I've been talking about, and I'm determined to do it.
Tell us.
Well,
can you?
All about really old food.
Old food.
Yes.
Tell us about old
food. So I'm part of my state's, Washington State's Humanities Commission sends a group of people out on the road to talk about different topics. And one of my new obsessions from visiting museums is really old food. There's lots of really 100, 200, 300-year-old bits of food in museum collections around the country, around the world. It has to do the food itself. If it exists, the fact that it does exist is one thing, but they're associated with events or
weddings,
people's stories,
okay.
weddings, happenstance, mistakes. And so I want to tell the stories of what those foods tell us about history and love and memory and things like that.
Katie Arnold is a contributing editor to Outside magazine, and she's also an ultra runner. She does crazy long distances. If you think I'm crazy about it, she's crazier. She just published her first book called Running Home, a memoir. And I think she's bold, but I asked her straight up whether she thinks she's bold. Here's her answer. Do you think that you're bold?
I think I'm bold.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Oh, good. I'm glad you don't shy away from that.
No, I think I'm definitely bold. But, for me, being bold is keeping going when you don't feel like it or when you're scared or, when you're not sure why you're doing it, but listening to that voice inside. And it's finding out what you're capable of, which is always more than we think. And it's living life to the fullest. I had this moment when after my dad died, where I realized we are going to die, all of us, but first I want to live.
Geraldine Brousseau is known to many as the co-founder of Peace Trees Vietnam. To many others, she's known as the creator of the Cinnabon recipe, so she's affectionately known as the Cinnamom. She has done many bold things in her life, and she continues to do so.
I love that question. It means being willing to be in the land of I don't know and to be fueled by a purpose much higher than my life and to continue stepping into it. So there's bravery and courage, but it's very different than that. When my mother was alive, we had these great conversations about living on the tips of the skinny branches because I've spent much of my life really sticking my neck out. And I always laughed with my mom and told her that, it's really not crowded up here. It's never crowded on the tips of the skinny branches.
Mm-hmm.
But taking steps that feel completely in... I love this question. It's giving me a way to look differently. I like the word bold. I don't think about it very often.
But you are bold.
Thank you.
I mean, you're living such a bold life.
I know. I stick my neck out all the time. Yesterday morning at 3:10, when my alarm went off, and I got up to go to the Bread Lab, beautiful bakery, to turn on all the lights at 4:30, and I had 3.5 hours to finish baking in 2 very complex ovens these 7 products for a very distinguished guest. I was thinking, this is really cool because I'm trusting myself fully that I can master the mechanics of the electronics in these ovens. I can calculate the rising and baking time of each of these items, and I had this very precise time window. Right. That was bold.
Chris Mackay and I recorded live at the Adventure Hub in Seattle. And Chris is the co-founder of Crooked Trails. She is a powerhouse, a dynamo, and I am so lucky to know her and to be a friend of hers for many years. This is what she said about being bold.
Yeah, I think, honestly, to do things you don't know you can do.
How do you know what those things are? Because you said before that you challenge yourself and you want to remain as active and vibrant and interesting and educated in your later years. How do you know what that is? Are you presented with something and you think like, oh, I could never do that. Okay, I'm going to do that. Or do you read the newspapers and the activity section and go, okay, what can I do this weekend that I've never done before?
I think it's a combination, right? You get presented with things and opportunities. Just last summer, my brother had have you seen those, what are they called? They're a flyboard. You put your feet on it, and then it's hooked to a jet ski, and then you fly around. I was like, oh, that looks so cool.
Did you do it?
Yes, I did. Of course, I had to. But the funny thing, though, is that at this age, I'm finding myself often saying, can I? Yes. Should I?
You have to...
You know, like I don't want to hurt myself either, right? If I fall now, I mean, it just is different. You don't recover as fast. Oh yeah, you put your helmet on. I will tell you, they were telling me how difficult it is and how you can get body slammed really bad, and it's really painful, and because you're going so fast, it's like you know, and. But then I watched him where he did this thing where you don't go full board. You just kind of go up to here, so the water's like right here. And if you lean forward, you just get to go through the water like this, like Poseidon. And I was like, oh, I just want to go around like that. I just want to be the mermaid, right? So I got in and I'm zooming through like this, and I thought, oh, this is easier than I just have good balance. So I started zooming up and then diving down, like go up like 15 feet and dive down, and you can porpoise. Oh my God, I have to admit, that was a lot of fun. Obviously, I had no idea if I could do it or not, but like I just decided to start studying the Blackfeet language. I'm part Blackfeet, so it's incredibly difficult. But you know, and I'm exploring areas of my spirituality and the Blackfeet religion, and I'm moving in that direction, and I have no idea what I'm doing. And half the time I make mistakes. But I think the main thing is that you just have to be willing to eat humble pie.
Lisa Betts-Lacroix is the host of the Superpower You podcast. She's all about uncovering what it is that makes a person special. And she's got some pretty strong thoughts about being bold.
I'm going to say that being bold is being unrelentingly, unapologetically, fearlessly true to who you are and willing to live in integrity, which to me is when your actions and your words match. When what you say and when there's no division or there's no major rift between what you say and what you do. And that being bold is the willingness to see what's in front of you and what's within you with a clear view, you know, with a kind of clarity of vision.
Vasu Varadhan is a professor at NYU. She is the author of On My Own Terms, A Journey Between Two Worlds. And above all else, she is tenacious and she is strong and she is thoughtful. This is what she said about being bold.
For me, to be bold is to never give up on the goals I have set for myself. You know, ambition sometimes is seen as a pejorative word, but I am ambitious for my mind to grow. And no matter what obstacles and sudden life changes like I've undergone, whether it be going from one culture to the other or having an arranged marriage and sadly to lose a child. I never forsook, I think is the right word, my goals in life. I continued. I do it now sometimes thinking that my son would never want me to be a quitter. So to be bold for me is not to quit on yourself. And it also, I think, is to be able to change the lives of others. I think that takes a lot of chutzpah.
Angela Shen is the founder of Savor Seattle, a food tour company that she is so passionate about. Beyond being the driving force of this company, she really wants to change and inspire others. And that's what lights her fire and gets her beyond her comfort zone.
It means to be uncomfortable and do it anyway. So the two hashtags that I live my life by are be bold and intention and intensity. I really think that's how I show up in the world, and I want to challenge myself every day to be a little bit uncomfortable. And from that, I'm going to grow. And I hope that every step forward that I take, that I help inspire somebody else to do the same. And that's what gives me incredible joy, is when I find out or hear through the grapevine that something that I shared maybe like 6 years ago at a panel inspired someone to finally take the step forward to start their business or to leave their job or whatever it was, to start their fitness journey. That is what drives me.
Diane Winston is a former legislator from Louisiana. She is ultimately an advocate for women, and she somehow managed to navigate her way through years of male-dominated politics, all while being her beautiful Southern hospitality-filled self.
Being bold, to me, it harks back to what I want for myself. And that is kind of what everybody wants. I want to be happy, and I want to live a life fulfilled. That means, and with a lot of people, pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. I'm not saying it's easy to play it safe. I'm just saying you push yourself out of your comfort zone, which is being bold for you, no matter what that is. Whether it's standing up to somebody you need to stand up to and haven't ever done that before, or whether it means taking a trip to Machu Picchu or climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. I mean, I'm thinking Beth is going to reach heaven. What's she going to do when she's up there? Because she's climbing that big old mountain. So it's getting out of your comfort zone. And it means being bold. You have to be bold to push yourself out of that comfort zone.
Sue Hollis calls herself an adventurepreneur. She is the author of Riding Raw, The Journey from Empty to Full. It's a memoir about her 3-month ride through North America on her 1,000cc motorcycle. After all of her adventures, she's figured out the simple thing that makes her feel bold.
I think, certainly the old me used to always conjure up a physical activity. For me, my safe place was doing something that was kind of dangerous and outrageous and scary.
Like racing.
I do kind of dive with sharks and, do kind of out there things. But that was a boldness that was requiring me to fuel a gap in my life. I think for me, being bold right now is being comfortable with myself. And it's also about, we talked about control. It's about kind of surrendering to the unknown. In the past, I've always wanted to know every single step. And it takes bravery to go, you know what? I'm just going to see what unfolds. I'm going to keep moving forward, but I'm going to kind of surrender to the unknown and see what unfolds, because I can't necessarily imagine all the amazing things that could happen. And if I plan it to the nth degree, there's a chance that I'm going to miss out on something just incredible. So make the plan, keep moving forward, but always be open to the wild cards that come and not try and control them. That's what being bold means for me.
Paula Froelich is a travel writer who really takes leaps when she travels. Listen to the full episode to hear how we first met and how I immediately identified her as someone as bold. Ultimately, I think it takes a lot for her to feel like she's being bold because so much of it, at least it appears this way, so much of it just appears to be really natural for her. She is one bold badass for sure.
I think it means literally just getting out of your comfort zone. I always used to say, so my website Abroad, the tagline is be bold, be brave, reclaim your life. And, sometimes people are like, well, what is bold for you? It's like going to Iraq. I'm never going to go to Iraq. Well, I get that is unique and a little bizarre. But I also understand that being bold is also sitting down by yourself at a restaurant's bar, turning to the person next to you and saying hello. And that can be in the neighborhood. That can be 3 blocks away. It can be 3,000 blocks away. Sometimes it's just literally doing something that you don't identify with yourself.
But are you uncomfortable with that?
Yeah.
You are.
I'm an extroverted introvert.
Meaning you re-energize by having your time alone, but you're out there.
I am. And I think a lot of people, because of my public persona, whether it's through my books or being on TV or seeing, my past work, have identified me as being this bold, ballsy, blah, I'll do anything, and, a lot of times it takes a minute for me, or I'll just be like, oh, am I really going to do this? Or, oh, and by do this, I mean, am I really going to look at that guy and be like, hey, how are you? What are you having for dinner?
So sometimes even that's difficult for you.
Yeah, it is. Because, you're having a bad day and you feel like a goober and you're just like, oh, they're going to think I'm a loser.
When it doesn't really matter.
No, and they might not be thinking that at all. It's taken me many years to understand that other people's reactions to me have more to do with them than it does me.
Sarah McGardle is a change agent and life coach. What she does is she helps others find their path. And by answering what it means for her to be bold, she's boiled it all down to just one simple statement that she applies to her own life as well as those she helps through her business.
I see being bold in the context of the work I do and in a lot of life as being willing to choose to do what pleases you.
Period. Anna Bronis is a writer, an artist, and a producer. You have to check out her Instagram account to see the coolest cutout artwork you've ever seen. She's also a co-producer of Afghan Cycles. It's a documentary you just have to watch. So there's a couple of tasks for you right now. Anna had a great take on how she thinks about being bold.
It makes me think of something I saw the other day about fearlessness. And the comment that was made was, this person had said, I don't think of fearlessness as like living without fear. I think it's living with fear, but like managing that and moving forward anyway. And I kind of feel like that relates to being bold. It's like being bold doesn't mean bulldozing through things and just pushing forward regardless. I feel like it means, like to me, it means to assess the situation, have a knowledge about, what's taking place and what's happening, and then challenging yourself to go perhaps like a little bit beyond that comfort zone, but not doing so in a way that is blind to everything else, And I think particularly in a world where kind of the self-help world of pursue your passion and, that kind of a thing, when we love those mantras. But I think that there's also room for kind of like pragmatism and being aware of who you are and what you need and adapting to that. Being bold for you might be very different for what being bold for somebody else.
Sabrina Sayer is a runner, a race director, an ultramarathoner, and a coach. Her tagline is to encourage everyone to be super. And really, she is one of the most positive, can-do women I've ever met. And when I have doubt about what I can accomplish, especially when it comes to running, I think, what would Sabrina say to me? And then somehow I get over my self-doubts just thinking about that. Here's her take on being bold.
To be bold. That's your little thing, right? Be bold.
It is my little thing.
I like that. So I think that you're inspirational.
Aw.
I think to be bold, it means finding yourself. to be okay, like maybe if you're a little different, or if you're doing something that someone says, well, that, like running, well, that doesn't sound healthy. Don't your knees hurt? To just know that like you're gonna do your best with the tools you have, and you're gonna strive to always be better.
Tanya Streeter is a world champion freediver, holding the record from 2012 when she dove to a depth of 525 feet. Tanya definitely knows a thing or two about being bold, and really what she does is just terrifying to me. So yeah, I would think she is a little bold.
I think to be bold to me means to be honest, because I think it's so easy not to be. And I think life is so much easier when you are, and you're so much truer when you are. You realize your true potential. You realize where you truly fit. You realize who your true friends are. You realize what your true worth is, what your true journey is, like all of those things. When you do something super tough, like embrace your truth every single day, I think you're about as bold as you can be.
I knew about Ashley Fullenwider because she's a co-founder of New Moo Clothes. It's NUUMUU. Got to check them out. But as we sat down to chat, I discovered that she had all these other really fascinating parts of her life going on, like really crazy stuff. She really seems to take the world by the tail and just enjoy every moment.
It means no fear. It means have courage. It means do the things that you want to do in the world, because you only get one shot.
When I first recorded with Mona Das, she wasn't a senator. She is now. So yay for her. I loved what she had to say about being bold and how it is so important for women, especially today.
Being bold comes in many levels and many forms. And I'm this bold at 46. So when I was in my 20s, being bold probably was different. And it meant standing up for myself. Is speaking up. There's so many times that people don't speak up because they aren't given the space to do it. And that's the spaces we like to create, is create space for people to speak up. So create the space for yourself. Know that your voice needs to be heard, especially if you're a woman. Please stand up for the woman that's going to come behind you, that you're going to then, reach and extend an arm to. Because that you're going to inspire somebody with your bold action, however big or small it seems to be. You're going to inspire somebody. I think Brene Brown has some really great ideas in her podcasts and TED Talks. And another one that I was just reminded of this morning that I love is Simon Sinek's Why.
I really like that idea that being bold is different at different points in your life, because it's not just about being out there and being the loudest or standing up for yourself, but it could just be these nuances that happen throughout your life, and we make different choices throughout our lives.
I wanted to say for those women out there that are used to saying yes, I remember the first time I said no. I mean, I get asked to do a million things, and I'm a people pleaser, so I wanted to make sure I do them all. And when you finally just say no, it's really powerful.
Patricia Schultz is the author of 1,000 Places to See Before You Die. Her take, of course, on being bold comes from the perspective of someone totally immersed in the lifestyle of travel. And really, because that pulls on my heartstrings so much, I couldn't agree with her more.
Such an easy question and a very loaded one, because how it resonates in each individual person, young, old, male, female, working, retired, wealthy, impoverished, it resonates in each of us very differently. In travel, I think it is to get off the proverbial sofa. And that sofa can be a myriad different things to many different people. But wherever you are comfortable and whatever you are familiar with and whatever you know best, leave that behind. Close the door behind you. Go out the front door. The world is yours. The possibilities available to us are there. And it's very, very easy for us to get out and explore and to go and to see and to discover and make friends along the way. But you just need to want to do it. So get off the proverbial couch. And I don't think, to be bold, some people think it needs to be like just the strength and the conviction of Hercules. No.
You don't have to jump out of an airplane.
No. Just baby steps, right?
Exactly. Just little steps.
Who is it that said, St. Augustine? No, he said, the world is a book. And he who does not travel reads just one page. So be bold and read pages 2 through, etc. But it was another, maybe Confucius or one of those Asian sages who said that, every trip of 1,000 steps begins with just one. So let tomorrow be that first step. Get off home base and start with your first step. And may it be a baby step. May it be getting a bus ticket and taking a day trip from the town or the city you live, or being very spontaneous and grabbing that $199 round trip ticket to Iceland.
Erin Seidemann is a pilot, and she lives in the New Orleans area. I was really interested in chatting with her because I know that so few women are pilots. I think it's something like 5% of all pilots are women. And really, flying in a small plane terrifies me. So I wanted to hear from someone who was bold enough to take that on as a challenge. What is it to you, like when you think of being bold, what does that mean to you? What is it? How do you observe that in other people or in yourself? What does that mean, being bold?
I think just trying new things, doing something that either will change your life or maybe even just change your perspective. Learning a new skill, learning a new language, just being different. We weren't born to just sit around and do our jobs and not go anywhere, not see anything, not do anything. So, and that's why I like to fly. It gives me travel. It gives me relaxation. It gives me something to concentrate about. So it keeps my mind active. To me, that kind of stuff, just living a full life, that's boldness.
Sally Burgesson is the founder of Oiselle, a women's running clothing company. And it's really easy to see how she has built such a successful company when you consider how she views what it means for her to be bold.
Being bold for me means choosing discomfort over resentment and essentially having any of those conversations that involve kind of working something out or getting to a better place of clarity and understanding.
Which goes back to connection. Which is very important to you. And keeping good connections.
Good connections. Everything. Relationships are everything. I think if you surround yourself with good people and have good relationships with those people, then the rest is commentary.
Sapna Chandra is a healthy food and lifestyle blogger with an Instagram account that became really popular when she was posting images, like gorgeous images, of her healthy vegan bowl food. Her company and Instagram account is real and vibrant. You got to check it out. She has pushed through her fears to create a really wonderful brand. What does being bold mean to you?
Being bold to me means moving forward and taking that step forward even when you're afraid of what's going to happen and you're fearful of what could potentially go wrong in taking that step forward, but you just do it anyways, and that no matter what, you'll be able to figure it out and navigate as needed. So I think a lot of times we do things in our lives where we're terrified, but you just keep moving forward, and you're like, because when you look back, you're like, wow, I can't believe I did that. I'm so glad I did that. I'm so glad I started that Instagram account 2.5 years ago almost. And because if I hadn't, I used to be such a private person and never wanted anything online. Now here I am doing something a lot more
and helping
public.
So many people, right?
Yeah.
Along the way. I think what's difficult is that I think people make decisions and they don't even realize that it's a fear-based, that it's coming from fear. I think they don't make changes and they don't realize that it's fear. I think that analyzing, like when you have a seed of a thought and analyzing why you're not following through with it, I think that's when you realize it might be fear-based. And then when you go through it, then you can look back and say, oh yeah, I was afraid to do that. But I think like making a change to a healthier diet, I think most people would say, oh, I'm not afraid to, I just don't want to. I think that's the initial thought. But I think like the work that you do, when you start uncovering that,
peeling back those layers.
Yeah, you start to realize that it is probably fear-based, but I think it probably takes a person a long time to get to the point to admit that it's fear that's driving them or not driving them, that's keeping them where they are.
Yeah.
Jennifer Jordan is a filmmaker and writer who, not long before we recorded, she had produced the documentary 3,000 Cups of Tea. And this told another side to the Greg Mortensen story. Watch the documentary for sure, but also listen to that episode and you'll know why John Krakauer sent me a follow-up email after that episode. It's really quite interesting.
For me, being bold means fighting, clawing, elbowing, pushing your way through fear. Because on the other side of fear is bold. For me, I think of what I've done that's bold. And each of them involved gut-wrenching fear. It's a combination of trusting that you can do it, trusting / hoping / praying you can do it, and the confidence of knowing that even if you can't, that if you falter or stumble or fail, but again, I'm just thinking of my own examples and why did I keep running the Vermont 50 when at mile 6 my intestines gave out and I ran 44 miles?
But that didn't involve fear. That was persistence and fortitude.
Right. That wasn't fear. Yeah, K2 is fear. K2 was blind fear. This film was fear. Jumping off the stratosphere in Las Vegas was fear, even though I had a harness on. Rock climbing is fear for me because I think I must have fallen off a cliff in an earlier life. Yeah, so for me, being bold is having something in front of you that scares you, silent, speechless, heart racing, and you do it anyway.
Debbie Goldman has a long history of work in the travel space. She's lived in India, she's worked in retail for companies that source fair trade products, and she has spent time with the Dalai Lama. Above all, Debbie seems to have boundless energy and really just the most amazing positive attitude.
Maybe accepting who you are and who you've become, and accepting that there's possibilities that you can do anything. You can still change. And I used to think that was limited to first world problems. Like, oh, we get to change here, but I think it's kind of human nature. Like you can be in the worst physical conditions that you're not going to get out of, and you can find the most happiness like inside of you or your family, or something can make you happy. So I think acceptance and willingness to change is bold. It's hard to just accept it. It's hard to have enough.
I think it's difficult. There's the willingness to change, and then there's the willingness to look at yourself and what needs to change. Because you almost have to have that before you're willing to change.
Yeah, that's hard. You don't want to find anything wrong.
No.
Yeah.
Geraldine DeRuyter alludes to it here, that she is the least likely person to travel, yet she does it, and she writes about it. She's the author of All Over the Place, Adventures in Travel, True Love, and Petty Theft. And she talks about kind of tying that in with what it means to be bold.
I think doing things regardless of the criticism that you think you may get, regardless of the unjust criticism, because I think there's good criticism, but do those things. And I also think there's something to be said about doing things that you are that you have been told you are not suited to do well. Because I think we hear a lot of those voices and a lot of those things that just stop us from doing it outright. And like I said, I am the person on the planet least qualified to travel. And I literally wrote a book about it. So I would say do the thing that you think that you want to do that other people are telling you can't do.
Nicole Antoinette has a podcast called Real Talk, in which she does just that with a variety of guests. A lot of real talk there. But she has also taken on some big adventures in the past few years, including some pretty monstrous through hikes. And I think in doing so, she's accomplished the things that she didn't think she could do.
To be bold, I think the first thing that came to my mind, which I guess the first thing is usually the right thing, is surprising yourself. I don't know. I think there's like a sort of connotation of boldness that has a lot to do with other people's opinions. You like what you were saying before, like other people think it's like so crazy that you're doing these 4 marathons or, you know, whatever that, yeah, like this idea of like impressing yourself or like surprising yourself and not shying away from the thing that you feel like you're supposed to do or make or stand for because it's not going to be universally well received. Anything that's worth doing or making is not going to be universally well received. Like one of my favorite things to do when I'm feeling a lack of confidence is I will go on Amazon and I will look up, you know, let's say my favorite 1 or 2 like books of all time or whatever, things that like really had like a profound impact on me. And I'll go read the 1-star reviews to be like, this book that like changed my life that I would buy for everyone that I know that I think is like a work of art. These 150 people think it's trash. So you can't, right? Like
that is really interesting.
To just be like, you can't, like you can't, and I feel like that, especially in our climate, you know, politically, in terms of social justice, in terms of like you got to stand for something. So I think that has like a big thing with boldness too, like stand for what you stand for, and like not everyone's going to be here for it. And okay, you know, easier said than done. And I'm definitely working on that, like needing less validation, caring less about being liked. That's sort of my like personal goal for 2018 is to care less about being liked by strangers on the internet. We'll see. To be determined how that goes.
Beth Massa did everything she could to get a job that would relocate her to Amsterdam from Seattle because she loved the city so much, Amsterdam. That in itself was pretty bold, but she went on to create a niche business there, a prepared food business called Ozarka, and it's where there is no single-use plastic used. And she really got in touch with herself, figured out what she wanted to do, and has created this amazing business in a city that she loves. Megan Bigging and a friend rode from Monterey, California to Hawaii in an ocean race and rowed, R-O-W-E-D. It was 57 days and over 2,400 miles. Megan knows all too well that it's the small steps, or in this case, the strokes, each stroke, that gets a person to their goal.
My whole takeaway from this whole thing, and it's kind of, like I said, this has been like a culmination of my life for the most part. It's, and I don't want to say just follow your dreams because this was never my dream. And it kind of stems from, like I said, all my athletes is starting to figure out who you are, but pushing yourself beyond what you think you can do. Quitting has never been an option for me. Like I've never wanted to quit anything. And that race, I wanted to quit so many times, but I never would have done that because there's so many other positives that outweighed it. And the end result was more than I could have imagined.
Just the feeling of accomplishment.
Oh my gosh. Like having that overwhelming happiness and then overwhelming sadness that it was over. Like total highlight of my life. But I think it's put me in a situation to want that more. So now I'm excited to see what I'm going to kind of fall into next. So I feel like it's just the little, it starts with like the little accomplishments and like grows bigger and bigger and bigger. And you don't have to row across an ocean to do it, but you know, you could. In the end, nothing's worth it nothing's worth not trying for.
Shannon Huffman Polson is a speaker. She's an author and she's an Apache helicopter pilot. Can you imagine that? This is another one of those things that totally would terrify me. And I can't ever imagine myself flying an Apache helicopter. It's crazy. So she has my complete admiration. Here's what she thinks about being bold.
Going back to the example that I gave you, I would say it's really about owning your own story. And I think that can be really hard to do. I mean, I think it can be, there's so many pressures and there's so many people that want to tell you who you are or what story you should be living. And they can be families, they can be people that you love, they can be friends, they can be society. And really being bold, I really think is being clear. And that goes back to being clear about your own why, being clear about your own core purpose, and then really owning that your story. And I think that's really hard and a unique and amazing opportunity.
Terry Waros is a resident on Molokai, one of the least visited islands in Hawaii. And she owns a little store there. It's like the town is like 1 block long. And she owns this great store. But really, she is so much more than a proprietor. She is a cornerstone of that community. She's a beacon. She's the one that you go to. She knows everybody. I asked her if she thinks she is bold. Do you see yourself as bold? In looking back, is there something that you feel like that was a bold move, Terry? Yeah, I admit that. Is there something in your past that you look back?
Well, like I said, I wouldn't have called it that. I don't call it that. Kalele, the name of the store, means to have faith. And it continues to be a journey of faith. And I couldn't do it without that faith. And I couldn't do it without the synchronicities that Creator sends to me, that when I'm struggling and wondering why the heck I go through all this stress of trying to figure out how to pay the bills. And I have a little girl who walks in, and she got about 5 feet in the door, and she's looking at the art on the walls. And I love children, right out of the mouths of babes. And she spun around and looked at me, and she said, well, is there anything in here I can buy for $1? And then she opened up her hand, and she said, actually, 4 quarters. And I was like, I got to find something for this little girl. She's just darling. And I have these trolls for $1. I said, well, honey, I have these trolls over here, and they're $1. You want a red one or a green one? Oh, she was delighted. And we shared stories, and she left. And I realized that's why I do what I do, is for that, to be a resource for my community. And
but to have that faith, it takes confidence, though. And so whether you call it confidence or being bold or fearlessness, it takes a certain amount
tenacity.
of confidence.
Tenacity, I'll give you.
Cassandra Overby is the author of Explore Europe on Foot. She abandoned what she thought would be a year of travel, returning home, and then finding a way to fall in love with travel again by seeing things a little bit differently. She slowed down and she started traveling by foot, and she wrote a wonderful book about it.
I think, to me, to be bold goes back to that really embarrassing choice that I made to go home from Guatemala and to give up travel for a while. And it means doing the embarrassing thing as long as it's really true to you, and not listening to everybody in the world who says you can't do that, or that's weird, or, why did you do XYZ? It's really listening to yourself and having the strength, because it does take a lot of strength to go against that grain, even if it's something like ditching what everybody thinks is a dream lifestyle by traveling all the time.
Dr. Janelle McCauley is a leadership and performance specialist who had just retired from the Air Force as a lieutenant colonel when we spoke. It was in the military that she was, and still is, making big changes by introducing mindfulness practices.
So it's interesting that you say that, because one of my commanders above me had called me bold for doing what I was doing. And I remember reflecting and sitting back and saying, was that a compliment? You know what I mean? Like, I was like, was that a compliment, or was that...
Well, I guess it's how it's said.
Yes. And so what I think being bold is when you can step outside that comfort zone, when you can challenge yourself and do it despite the skepticism, right, that might be around you. And whether that comment was made as a compliment or not, right, it was a reflection on me being outside my comfort zone. And that's where I want to be. And that's where I think we all should strive to be, to better ourselves and to help others, right, to take them along on that journey too. And I do feel like, if anything, if I've inspired those little girls out there who are ballerinas, or who, somebody would look at and say, there's no way you would ever make it in the military, to think, yeah, I can do that.
Or there's no way you'll ever make it to the American Ballet Theater in New York.
Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Why not?
Whatever that dream is, whatever, you want to be bold yourself, right? I think that we need more women to do it along the way, to kind of not widen the path, but light the path for others to know that it is a possibility.
Michelle Clark Mason is the Seattle Seahawks nutritionist. She's been called their secret weapon, and as one of only a handful of women in the Seahawks training facility, she has some interesting challenges, but she's so passionate about what she does that she's managed to stand up for what she believes in.
To not hesitate to stand up for the parts of my job that are right, even though the changes I want to make at the facility aren't popular. even if everyone knows that it's better for them, you're taking away their comfort or their habit, their pleasure point. I understand that's important to you. This is why it's not okay. And to not back down on that, to not hesitate to speak up, and to put all the passion out there.
Radha Agrawal is the author of Belong, Find Your People, Create Community, and Live a More Connected Life. She's done just that through her Daybreaker events, which at the time we spoke was 500,000 people and growing.
Yeah, to be bold is the most bold thing you can do, the most generous thing we can do as humans is to create community. So if everyone listening to this podcast read the book or had an idea for building a community, go out and do it. Just whether it's 5 people, whether it's 2 people, whether it's 3 people, just the most generous, the most bold thing, the most wonderful thing we can do as human beings. And you're doing it yourself with the Be Bold community, with your travel community. You're doing it. You're doing the most generous act we can do, which is to have the courage to create community. So go out there, be bold, and create community. Then you're really offering a service for the world. And for you.
Jean Thompson is the founder of Seattle Chocolates. Yum. She had just gone through a rebranding of the company when we spoke, and she felt like she needed to be bold, to make bold decisions in order to properly run her company.
To take chances, to constantly be looking at something that might be a little scary. When we just went through this brand relaunch, I know a lot of my people were like, holy crap, what is she taking us through? And now they're so proud and so bought in and excited. It's taken the whole company, like we've sort of banded together. That was a big risk. That was expensive. I don't know if it's going to pan. I still don't know if it's going to pan out, right? Because it just hit the shelves 3 days ago. But it was a risk that I felt I had to take. So you've got to be bold. If you sit back and you just sort of watch what everybody else is doing and wait for things to happen, you will lose and you will go out of business. So I think bold is kind of the new, it's a mandatory. It isn't like wow, you're really bold. If you're not bold, you won't win.
Caroline Paul is the author of several books, including Gutsy Girl, Escapades for Your Life of Epic Adventure. She is all about encouraging young people, especially girls, to be brave and bold, of course. But her messaging really is about bravery, so I asked her what it means to be brave.
It's easy to encapsulate. Being brave is moving outside your own comfort zone.
Period. Whatever that is.
Whatever that is.
Pam LeBlanc is an outdoor junkie and journalist living in Austin, Texas. In 2017, she deemed it her year of adventure and did epic stuff that she never thought she could do, like jumping off a 10-meter diving board. She rappelled down a 38-story building, and she even ran in a naked 5K race.
To me, to be bold means to be true to your inner self and to do stuff that maybe your whole life people were telling you can't do, but you're going to try it. So it means kind of throwing yourself out there and not being afraid of making a fool of yourself.
How do you find your inner self? Because I think a lot of people don't even know how to get in touch with themselves.
If there was nobody else on the planet, nobody, and you were just there by yourself, scrambling over rocks and looking for something to eat or whatever you're doing out there, what would you do? How would you act then? If no one was there to watch you or care about you, you wouldn't be trying to impress with someone with how smart you were or how funny you were or what you looked like. So how would you just act?
Rita Golden Gelman is author of Tales of a Female Nomad and has lived much of her life without a quote-unquote home. She, very early on when in her travels, she learned to walk into a restaurant by herself and have a meal, and then went on to spend her life traveling, even though that first meal was petrifying to her. I think Rita lives every day being bold, and she doesn't even realize it.
Again, it's talking to strangers. I think that might be the most... To do it alone, I wouldn't call that bold particularly. You know, I guess it's a different context.
For some people it is.
Right. But for me, being bold is, again, we're back to that word, connecting.
Is it difficult for you?
Not at all.
What's difficult for you that would make you say, boy, that was a bold move, Rita, what I just did?
I don't know.
You're just bold every day, aren't you? And you don't even know it.
I also eat everything. And that's a nice tip
Yeah.
That people offer you things that you can't imagine eating. I mean, bugs and all kinds of
That
things.
is pretty bold. I agree with you there. Bonnie Crawford is a plus-sized adventurer who had just returned from Tanzania when we recorded this. She had attempted to climb Mount Kilimanjaro along with a group of plus-sized women. So that was all pretty cool. All women, all plus-size.
I think to be bold is to push yourself outside of your comfort zone in a big and unpredictable way. Become a hiker or a camper at age 40, 41 when you've never owned hiking boots
or 51 or 61 or 71. Keep going.
Exactly. I cannot tell you. We had many women in our group who were in their 20s, 30s, 40s. We had a couple of women who were over 50 who were crushing it. They were passing me up on the trail. And we saw one of the guys that worked out with me for months in the altitude room, you know, in his 60s. I met a woman there one day who was in her 70s, and she was like, "Oh, I just, was on Kilimanjaro a couple years ago." And it's like, you can do, and I like to think for myself, you can do anything you put your mind to. And I think that you have to choose to be bold. Like, it is an active choice. And there's a lot of reasons that people would choose otherwise, but there's nothing wrong with being bold and just choosing and then choosing joy. Like, when you're bold, you're going to be more likely to be joyful, I think.
Laura Musikansky studies happiness and is the executive director of the Happiness Alliance. It was therefore befitting that I asked her a slightly different question rather than the usual about being bold. I always ask, what does it mean for you to be bold? But I'm going to change it a little bit today, and I'm going to ask you, what does it mean for you to be happy? And not necessarily you, but just like, what does it mean, like when that, like, be happy? What, can you give that in a little paragraph?
Well, I guess I'd say for me, what it really means is, this has been the common theme, is to just really be truly who I am, not trying to be better or be somebody different, but just to really be truly who I am. And that is, living in this society, that's not an easy thing to do. I know it when I am able to feel like I know it from an embodied experience, when I'm feeling like rooted and calm and things feel right and aligned inside of me. That's my experience of being truly happy. And then there's also, there's other things that show up. So that sense of like humming, sense of like you call it flow or oneness or humming with the universe. That's how I experience it personally. There's a lot in this world that will tell you that living your dream or continuing to do the work that you're called to do, especially in this specific instance for me of being, doing this work volunteer when I'm like, I have an MBA, I'm a lawyer with, these, now I've got 2 different certificates. So it's like, I could make a lot of money, right? So what, is she crazy? I'm like, yes, I'm crazy. I believe in the work that I'm doing, and I know that I'm supposed to do it. This is my calling. So to be living my calling, even though rationally or economically, it doesn't make any sense.
Teresa Shook is the founder of the Women's March. Because she's out there encouraging more boldness from women, I asked her what women could do to be more bold. What do you think that a woman can do to just be more bold in her life? Well-behaved women seldom make history, which is the button you're wearing. Yeah, that's great. Yep.
This was given to me just recently, and by a woman who's she worked with Eleanor Roosevelt.
Oh my goodness.
And she said she only gives it to special people.
Yeah.
And so this is what I believe.
So well-behaved women seldom make history. So don't behave.
Don't behave. Yeah. Don't follow the norm. Even though I'm a lawyer, I'm a scofflaw, and I go around it's not necessarily that I break the law, but I don't always follow the rules. If there's not a path, just find one. Make a path. And that's how you get to where you want to go. And my life has been a zigzag.
Finding your own path.
Yeah.
I love that. Pauline Fromer is the co-president of Fromers, the guidebooks, which you all know and love. Her thoughts around being bold, of course, can be applied to traveling more.
Be bold means getting out there. It means facing your fears and learning and staying open to the world and not assuming that people who are different from you don't have your best interests in mind. That's a double negative, but it means being open and not letting fear guide you.
Nicole Davis is a 2-time Olympian and is now a mindset coach. She works with Fortune 500 companies and the Seattle Seahawks, all kinds of pretty cool stuff. She gives a lot of thought to being your best. And here's what she said about being bold.
For me, there's probably a couple aspects to being bold. One is doing something that is not necessarily conventional. I don't think you have to reinvent the wheel to be bold, but I think you have to do something where there's some unknowns and a little bit of risk, and it's maybe a little bit different or nuanced than other people would suggest you do or be. And I think it takes some mental hardiness to go for it when you figured out what it is that you want to go for it. And I think it's unique to you. For everyone, it's different. Being bold. I often get caught up in, telling my Olympic story, and it's not relatable for everybody. Like I said, for some people, high performance is finishing the day with peace and joy. And then being bold through that process is like actively seeking peace and joy. The trap for most human beings and for our species is that we want to fall back to what's comfortable. And so that's why I think there's an element of unknown and risk and a little bit of uncomfortableness if you're going to pursue being bold.
Meg Noble Peterson is a lifelong traveler. I think she's in her early 90s now. And she's also the author of Madam, Have You Ever Really Been Happy? Every time I get an email from her, she's setting off on some new adventure. Really, she is such a huge inspiration.
Being bold means to decide what you want to do and do it. I mean, bold, try something you've never done before. That's the thing. Do that every day. It's sort of like when I was writing my first big method book for autoharp. This is connected. Okay, I said I was up in Canada. What a beautiful resort. Name me the most beautiful resort in Canada. Anyway, I was there making a speech, doing a workshop. I said, God, I got to finish this method book. Got to finish it by the first of the year. And at this point, it's September. And one woman, very wise older woman, said, May I give you a suggestion, Meg? How about just saying you're going to work 1 hour a day? Make it 2. Okay, 2 hours a day from 9 to 11 or from 10 to 12. Pick your time. That's it. I'm going to work 2 hours a day. Now, if I get really interested and I go 4 hours a day, that doesn't count for tomorrow. 2 hours a day, each day. Never mind when you think it's going to be done. Do it till it's done. Man, that was the best advice. I do that with everything. I'm going to sort 1 box a day. If you get really happy, you can sort 2, but you still got to do that 1 box tomorrow. So you take one thing that you've been wanting to do, one simple thing. I've always been wanting to walk downtown and back. I've never done it. I've always said, it's too long. It's in Seattle. Everything's too steep, blah, blah. And do it. You can write it down. What did I do today that I didn't do yesterday? So I'm going to be bold. Be bold is a fabulous mantra.
That's good. I like that mantra. Beth Jacino considers herself an unlikely thru hiker. She basically went from couch to walking 1,000 miles on the Camino de Santiago. Rather than just asking her what it means to be bold, I wanted to know if she thought she was actually bold. I'm going to ask that question, but I first want to ask you, do you think you were bold in doing this?
Yes, because I had to gather that courage. So I'm going to say yes. I think being bold is saying yes. I think being bold is saying, yes, I can do that when an opportunity comes up or when something interesting comes up, even when you have no idea how you're going to do that. I think being bold is not talking yourself out of something because you think you're not that enough, whatever that X enough, and just being willing to throw yourself into something and try it. You're going to surprise yourself.
No doubt about the fact that Chris Fagan is bold. She and her husband Marty walked over 560 miles over 48 days to the South Pole. Shortly before we recorded, they also participated in the race to Alaska. They ended up capsizing and they had to be rescued. So even that was just crazy. I followed that on Facebook. And you can see her adventures on Facebook. And I've linked to that in the show notes for her episode. So check that out.
You know, for me, being bold is being willing to just bravely walk into the unknown and find things that excite and bring you joy that you may never have imagined, but you're willing to be brave and sort of push yourself to places that you may never have imagined were possible.
Naomi Wachira is a singer-songwriter, originally hailing from Kenya. And boy, just listen to that conversation that I had with her. She really went through a lot and had to be very bold to get to where she is today, both as a woman and a singer.
I think for me to be bold goes back to this whole thing of like owning your life and owning all of it, not just like the parts that you like. It's also owning like the dark parts and the parts that, you know, make you like, I want to get rid of it. It also means this capacity to constantly like look inward and ask questions and befriend yourself in a way. Yeah, I think that in a nutshell, like that's what being bold is all about.
Natalia Cos Vallejo is a feminist and an activist whom she says is motivated by anger, although you would never know it. She is all about standing up for the rights of others, especially women.
To me, being bold means letting myself be uncomfortable and even embracing that being super uncomfortable in order to make positive change for other people.
Michelle Westmoreland is a photographer and filmmaker. When we spoke, she had just released her documentary film, Headhunt Revisited. This traces the life of an American woman, Caroline Mittinger, who spent 4 years in the 1920s documenting, through her art, the people and places of Melanesia, and that was specifically the Solomon Islands and my great love, Papua New Guinea. Needless to say, Michelle was immersed for a long time in the life of Caroline.
What it means to me to be bold is I just have to mimic Caroline in that area. No is not a part of my vocabulary. So being bold is whenever someone tells you no, then I'm going to find a way to do it.
Are you a rebel?
A wee bit.
Are you still with me? We're down to my last conversation. This one was very special to me. This was with a musician that I have admired for a long, long time. 25 years, I think, just off the top of my head. Really long time. And it's Laura Love. And she's a musician. She had just lost her sister, Lisa, to suicide a few months before we recorded. And she was just so raw and so wonderful and lovely when we spoke. And she really knows all too well how precious life is. And rather than asking her about being bold, I asked her about lessons that she's learned. This is what she shared. What's the lesson?
The lesson is being present. The lesson is to be kind. The lesson is to love fragile, delicate people. The lesson is to not be bitter. The lesson is to tell everyone, even people you don't know that you love, that tell them that you love them. Not let maybe being in some sort of relationship mask or be the thing that distracts us from doing what we're supposed to do, which is share our precious gifts, Every day I want to be with Lisa. I want to see her again every day. And I hope I do see her again. And I hope I see some of these 14 cats that are, that have all died of old age, and I'm down to 2, But the lesson is be here now. Do as much as we can. Don't be bitter. Forgive, forgive, forgive. Love, love, kindness, even in these times. And that blame and anger have no place in growth.
Did you stick with me through all that? That was a lot. I know. Thank you so much. Really, thank you for being here today and for being here for all the episodes of the She's Bold podcast. It really means a lot to me to have so many fans and listeners who understand the importance of sharing these stories. For links to show notes and more information about all the guests you heard on this episode, go to shesboldpodcast.com/episodes. You can also find the links and more information in the show notes in whatever podcast app it is you're using to listen to this. If you'd like to support the show and let me know how much you are inspired by these conversations and how much you look forward to hearing all of this positive information in a time really when we're surrounded by so much negativity, go to shesboldpodcast.com/Patreon. Patreon supporters get access to bonus content, which is usually in the form of a question I ask the guest. And that's outside of the main content. So it's just a bonus, really interesting question. There's also some great swag on that Patreon page at the various levels of support. Don't forget to check out my tours at wandertours.com. I've got trips to Morocco, Papua New Guinea, and culinary tours to Seattle and Santa Fe coming up. You can connect with me by friending me on Facebook, and I'm WanderGal on Instagram. Ladies, you can join the Be Bold Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/Be Bold Group for support and encouragement for whatever ways you're trying to be bold. Thanks for joining me for another episode of the She's Bold podcast. And until next time, be bold.